Hey Pre-Cal, this is your last section, so your last video for this particular unit. Most of this section is just re-familiarizing you with the distance formula and midpoint formula and equation of a circle. So all this stuff you learned in geometry. Something I want to point out on all these formulas, you don't have to memorize them. They're going to be given to you on a test or quiz. And but we don't tell you like what things represent. So you kind of know, you have to know how to use them and what to plug in to them. So when we do these first two problems, we're going to use the distance formula to find the distance between the 2 points. It asks for exact distance and approximate distance. So keep in mind, approximate distance is when you have to round. And just because your calculator has numbers all the way across the screen, don't copy those numbers down and say, that's the exact thing that my calculator said. Absolutely not. Your calculator needed to keep going, but had to round on the final number on the calculator screen. So, rounded, this is whether you round or whether your calculator rounds. Exact usually means you're going to have a radical in your answer, or you might have a pi symbol in your answer. And we're not dealing with pi symbols today, so today we're going to be, if it says exact, we may end up with a radical in our answer. So problem number 1, just for your benefit, I've labeled this as x1, y1, and this is x2, y2. Not that it matters, but I just decided to call this my first ordered pair and this one my second ordered pair. And so you can see that I used the distance formula and I plugged in x2 minus x1, and I plugged in y2 and y1, and I got the square root of 40. So the simplified version is to break this down into perfect squares, and I get 2 radical 10. That's the exact version. And then on my calculator, I don't think it said what to round to. Oh, yeah, it did. It said go to the nearest 10th. So this is rounded to the nearest 10th. Next one, I went ahead and labeled those for you. And when you plug these in, you can either do this on your calculator or do it in your head. You get the square root of 196. Now, this does root nicely. So the square root of that is just 14. That's the exact answer. There is no approximate. It just came out really clean. Midpoint formula. So keep in mind, we're just averaging our x values and we're averaging our y values. There are only 2 of them. We're just doing the average, and we usually use the midpoint formula, and we put a capital M out here that says, this is my midpoint. So, again, x1, y1, x2, y2, plug them in, did the math, and I got 4, negative 1/2. Warning. If you're doing these, and if you get numbers that aren't quite this easy, and you use your calculator, let me warn you, if you do 1 plus 7 divided by 2, your calculator is going to do the 7 divided by 2 because it knows its order of operations. So make sure if you need to use a calculator for any of these midpoint problems, hopefully they would be harder than this one, but whatever, make sure you either push equals after your numerator before you divide by 2, or put your numerator in parentheses to tell your calculator, add these first, then divide. Just you need to be smarter than your calculator. All right, this one's an interesting problem. This one gives us the midpoint. Here's one of our points, so I called it x1 and y1. We have to find the other one, so we have to find x2 and y2. Now keep in mind that this is the midpoint. So if I did the midpoint formula, this number right here is like the x answer that I get when I do that formula. This number right here is like my y answer that I get when I do that formula. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do the formula. I'm going to do the formula using this x1. I'm going to write this for x2. I'm going to do the formula on it, and I'm going to say, when I do my x's, this is what I get. Okay, so x1 plus x2, we don't know what that is, divided by 2. That's supposed to get me 3 radical 10. And then I'm going to do it on my y's. y1, y2 divided by 2. The answer that that's supposed to get me is negative 5 halves. So then I've split, from that point, I split it up into 2 parts. I show you how I work on x and then I work on y. So let's focus on x. I take the formula that I wrote, that plus that divided by 2, and the answer that I'm supposed to get. I multiply both sides by 2. Outside, outside, those can multiply. Outside, inside, those can't multiply. So I get 6 radical 10. I subtract 4 radical 10 from both sides. That's my x2. Working on the y's. So I took what I wrote in my formula for y, y1 plus y2 divided by 2, the answer that I'm supposed to get, and then I solved this equation. I multiplied both sides by 2. I added 3 to both sides. I got my y2. So the other end point, my x2 and my y2, look like that. Feel free to pause the video and catch up with me. Moving on to circles. This is what the equation of a circle looks like, and it looks awful because I've tried to trace over it. But when you see the equation of a circle, you're going to see basically everything that I bolded in black. So you're going to see the parentheses, the x, the minus, the parentheses, the 2, the plus, the parentheses. You're going to see all that. And then you're going to have a number in this spot. You're going to have a number in this spot. And you're going to have a number over here that's probably already going to be squared. Just keep in mind that your formula looks like this, and it's supposed to have a minus here and a minus here. Supposed to have. If it does, then you can look at just this number. So check that that's a minus, grab the number that's behind it, check that that's a minus, grab the number behind it. That's your center. That's your center, h comma k, and of course r is your radius. So, when it's up to me to write the equation, so notice like I went ahead and did all this with a black pen. I went parentheses, x minus, and then I left that blank. Close, squared, plus, parentheses, y minus, and I left that blank. Close, squared, equals something squared. And then I just look up here in the information and I plug in those numbers. So I plug in 0 here, I plug in negative 6 here, and I plug in radical 5 here. And then just a little bit of simplifying, just so it's not awkward, like this. This is awkward. I would just call this x squared. This is awkward. Just call that plus. And this, go ahead and simplify it. It's just 5. So there's the equation of the circle, having that information. Next one. I've kind of highlighted, bolded, what you're seeing here. So note, that was supposed to be a minus, and it's not. I'll talk about that in a minute. That's supposed to be a minus, and it is. So I know that k, my y coordinate of my center point, is 1. I'm grabbing the number that's directly behind that. This is some number squared. So r is 2. This had to be negative 3 in order to force this minus to be plus. The number that was inserted here had to be negative 3 in order to change a minus to a plus. So my center is at negative 3, comma 1, and my radius is 2. It said to graph it, so I did. Negative 3, comma 1, center, and then I went radius of 2, radius of 2, radius of 2, radius of 2, circle. And then it says give the domain and range. So domain, how far left does it go? How far right does it go? Negative 5 and negative 1? Including, right? There's not a weird like open circle here. No, right, including. How range, how low does it go? How high does it go? So domain, negative 5 to negative 1 including. Range, negative 1 to positive 3 including. Moving on. I need to write an equation of the circle that passes through the origin in here. Clarification. I should have made this more clear in the directions. It doesn't just pass through those 2 points. Those 2 points are the ends of the diameter. So it looks something like that. I know, terrible circle. But my diameter passes through here. Okay? So that's kind of what it looks like. And I'm supposed to write an equation for that circle. What do you need to write an equation for a circle? You need the center. Didn't give me the center. And you need the radius length. Didn't give me the radius length. I know the center is like right about here. I know the radius is like from here to here or from here to here. But it didn't tell me what that is. So that's up to us to find. We have to find the center point and we have to find the radius length. So that's what I'm going to do over here. It says write the equation. So we need the center, we need the radius. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to work on the center. Now remember, you were given the ends of the diameter. The center is right smack dab in the middle of that. So I'm going to do midpoint. I do midpoint formula and I get here is my center point. Now, I need the radius. I suggested using the distance from the origin to here. Look at what I did. From the origin to here. You don't want to find the diameter. So don't use these two. Use one of the points you were given and the center that you found. And that's going to give you the radius length. So I did distance formula with those 2 points. I got radical 20 for my distance. That's my radius. Here's the unsimplified version. Okay, so x minus, plugged in my center point. Y minus, plugged in the y coordinate of my center point. Radius, and I'm going to square it. Okay, that stays the same. This becomes less awkward, and this is simplified to just 20. Okay. Now, the last one, I did not work out the last one. We really, really need to do this one together. So it says write the circle equation in standard form. So this circle equation needs to be transformed to look like this. I need x plus or minus something here. I need y plus or minus something here. I need a number over here. So to get you started, I told you that the first thing you need to do is group your x's and y's, and move your constant over to the other side. So notice I grouped my x's together and I left a space. That's going to be important. I grouped my y's together and I left a space. That's going to be important. Equals 15. Pause the video, write that down. Now, hope you're back with me. Hope you've written that down. Here's what I want to show you. This is where we are, and this is our goal. So, if this is my goal, to have my x's looking like this, like a binomial squared, then don't you agree that a binomial squared, like the step above that, wouldn't it look like that? This squared would look like something times itself, correct? Same thing with the y's. Making sense so far? A step above this would be something times itself. A step above this would be something times itself. So what this means is, it's called completing the square. 99.999% sure you learned how to do this in Algebra 2, but I'm about 90% sure that it didn't stick. So we need to do it again. This needs to be 1, 2, 3. There needs to be a term here so that these three terms are a perfect square trinomial. What that means is a perfect square trinomial is the result of multiplying two identical sets of parentheses together. So what that means is, when I multiply the first two together, I'm supposed to get x squared. Check. When I multiply my outer and my inner, and I combine them, guess what I get? I get 8. But wait, these have to be identical. So what do you think these numbers have to be so that I do outer and inner and add them to get 8? I think they have to be 4s, don't they? So really lightly, I think that has to be a 4 and that has to be a 4, don't you? Let's check. First, x squared. Outer, 4x. Inner, 4x. Add them. 8x. Last, 16. You want that number right there to be 16. Plus 16. Oh my goodness, you know what we just did? Totally illegal. We just added 16 to the left side of an equation. What did we forget to do? We forgot to add it to the right side of the equation. So keep it legal before the math police come and get you. If you put plus 16 over here, you've got to put plus 16 over there. Okay, did you get that? Let's do the y's. So, a step up from this is two binomials that are exactly the same, because another way to write something times itself is to write it squared. So before it looked like this, these were the same. Now, 1, 2, 3. I need a number here. This needs to be a perfect square trinomial so that when I do first, I get y squared. When I do outer and inner and combine them, I need to get negative 2. Now, they have to be the same number. They have to be the same number. Outer, inner, combined, negative 2. I think they have to be a 1, but Let's find out. First, outer, -1y. Inner, -1y. Check. Last. What do you want this number to be? Well, multiply those two together. I think you want it to be +1. Oh, keep it legal. Add it to the other side. Okay, so we added 16 here and there. We added 1 here and there. Now, I think my x's, if I just like do a quick rewrite, I think these can be rewritten to this, which can be written like that. Y's we added 1 here, we added 1 there. I think that this trinomial can be factored into this, just a rewrite. I'm not like subtracting 1 or anything, I'm just factoring it. So a rewrite to here, which can be written as y minus 1 squared. Now I wonder what's on the right-hand side. Well, on the right-hand side used to be 15. Now it's 15 plus 16 plus 1. There's your equation for your circle. It's called completing the square. You might want to write the time on the video down. Of course, this is the last thing we're doing, so it's right at the end of the video. But when it's time for you to go and do these on your own, you might want to see this one more time. So remember, to get you started, I said group your x's together, leave space. Group your y's together, leave space. Move your constant to the other side. I like to go ahead and write down what it's ultimately supposed to look like. So ultimately, my x's are supposed to look like this, and then I back it up a step. And then I can figure out what number goes there. Ultimately, my y's need to look like this, but I always back it up a step so that I can figure out what number needs to go there. Okay, hope you enjoy this one.